Shakir. Your team. Our pizza. Picasso's. Order online today at Picasso'sPizza.net.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to this Trainwreck Sports Podcast. We are here to pay the bills. Jake Micah, joined by Mike Bunt and Michael Partham here as we are finally everybody's in to the NFL offseason. Super Bowl 59 was Sunday night, and unless you have been under a rock or on a castaway island somewhere or something, you know that the Eagles are world champions, dominating the Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday. So I'll start with you, Mike Partham. How did you feel? Did you watch? Were you locked in? How did you feel as you were seeing the result play out on Sunday night?
I can tell you that I knew people that were going to their own little parties, or maybe some public, watch parties. Like I think it was at Riverworks or a couple of other places. Super Bowl protest parties. I debated going to them, but ultimately I knew I was going to turn on the game just to see how it was going to play out in the first few minutes. I didn't really watch any pregame stuff throughout the day, but once it got to game time, I turned it on. It's like, okay, let me just see what's going to happen here. And then one play after another, Mahomes was getting harassed and hurried, and the Eagles were just scoring points left and right, and I was enjoying it very much so, more and more. Didn't turn it off until the very end of the game, so I just basked in it, and I just basked in the fact that all throughout this season, we kept saying that I at least kept saying that the Chiefs were living on an edge. They were using voodoo magic to get away with stuff. They were getting saved by Deus Ex Machina endings, and the only team that really decisively beat them was the Bills in the regular season at any rate. And we were like, well, I guess if the Bills can't beat them in the playoffs, then no one's going to beat them. And the Chiefs and the Eagles just come out here rushing 4 guys, not blitzing once throughout the game, and just expose the Chiefs. This is the team that we were hoping to see them exposed as throughout the year. And guess what? They are who we thought they were. I just wish one day that we can do that to them in the playoffs, for crying out loud. And hopefully we can do that now that we actually have a competent special teams coordinator coming in today or in recent days.
I'll be real. I don't think I really learned too much about the Chiefs, and I don't think that performance really validated what anybody said about the Chiefs during the regular season. Not to take the opposite side intentionally here, Mike. The Eagles are just way more talented than the Chiefs.
True.
It's really simple. There was some NFL experts. I think Andrew Brandt said, if you just look at the Eagles' offensive and defensive line, it was a bad matchup for KC. My big takeaway really is that really, unless the Bills somehow find a way to develop some stout defensive line, they're not stopping Kansas City anytime soon. That's the only time you see Kansas City lose is when people manhandle their offensive line. So unless the Bills somehow find an answer for that, I don't think anything's really going to change what the Bills do. And because how many times have we had this conversation? Well, why does the Bills defense always fall apart against Kansas City in the playoffs? And what do we always say? Well, their defensive line can't get any pass rush. Their defensive line can't stop the run. And then what do fans say? Why do we always have to be passive against the Chiefs in the playoffs? Why are we so conservative? Why do we lay off the ball? The Eagles didn't blitz once. Their strategy is basically what the Bills do against Kansas City. So what did we learn? We learned that the Bills' defensive strategy is very similar to the Eagles' defensive strategy with one major difference. The Eagles have players that are dogs on their defensive line that get the job done, and the Bills don't. So if anything, know what this conversation should be right now? No longer should it be, does Sean McDermott know how to coach against Andy Reid? It should be, what the hell is Brandon Beane doing to fix the damn defensive line? And how come when we get told year after year after year that it's ridiculous for the Bills to make major moves into the top 15, top 20, because we have to prize our draft capital, When you see Philadelphia getting picks in the top 15, you see Kansas City getting their guys ahead of us. We've lost out on guys because of aggressiveness from other teams. But when we're trading up for Kyer Elam and Dalton Kincaid, and then trading down for Keon Coleman. Like, I think Brandon Beane is a great GM. He's still great at what he does. But his drafting and his his use of the defensive line, his assets in recent years, is the reason why this Bills team hasn't won a Super Bowl. That's my takeaway.
Yeah. I mean, Greg Rousseau and Ed Oliver, between them, can compile good regular seasons, but one or the other has not shown up in recent years in the playoffs, and that really has been this team's Achilles heel. And Brandon Beane missing, it's not that he is a bad drafter, he's a bad first-round drafter in recent years. Those are the swings and the misses that are really affecting the makeup of this team.
I agree with everything you guys just said. I think the talent on the D-line is a severe issue, and that's the thing, is they've taken swings. Like, you can't even say it's because they haven't paid attention to it. There's plenty of first and second round talent on that defensive line that had an opportunity or high price. And the Miller injury is really unfortunate, and it's something that I have to bring up all the time. But still, Von Miller should have been an additive piece to a great tandem, or at least a solid tandem, with Rousseau and Epineza and those guys, and Oliver and Jones, everybody on the defensive line. I think everybody is in a spot where you can improve on their spot on this team. I think
they had the right idea getting Von Miller to bolster the defensive line. It just fell apart, literally and figuratively, halfway through. That regular season game where Von was terrorizing Patrick Mahomes all the way to the end, where they closed it out in Kansas City.
Von, even a healthy Von, do we think that really would have been the difference in most of these games?
Well,
it was a good idea. I was all for it, and I still like that they took the swing. But like, you're never one player. Like, you're an entire defensive line. Like, you think about it, like, Rousseau is good, but you could say he's borderline great, like, if you factor in other things. But he's not an elite pass rusher. Even in college, he gets the cleanup sacks. Like Epineza, he's good for like 6 sacks a year. You have Ed Oliver, who's a top 10 pick. Yeah, is he good? Yeah, he's good, but he's not great. He's not elite. Daquan Jones had spurts before he got hurt. He's not elite. He's okay. We have a lot of these. They're good. They're
B-plus players.
We have rotation pieces. What we need is some dogs, and he really hasn't hit on them. And let's be real, Von Miller was 33 years old when we signed him to that contract. So to even expect that year 2, year 3, year 4, you're just hoping to at that point. Like, the whole Myles Garrett thing is he's 29. He's 4 years younger than Von when he was at that point. Max Crosby's 27. Like, we got to start talking about, like, Brandon Beane has not hit on the defensive linemen that he's picked. He's gotten good guys. We've gotten a lot of culture guys. But at some point, we have to start sacrificing culture to get dogs and to get guys that are beasts out there. I don't want to generalize like too much when I say dogs and beasts, but like, we need guys that are men that are going to terrorize people. Like, Kansas City has
dogs is the right way to describe this. It's Jimmy's and Joe's at this point is what we're describing. Like, they need talent across the board on that line. Like, it's every position can be replaced. And honestly, my issue with it, and I know that they added, Oliver was a high pick. What was that, 2019? Was he the first round pick? So in 5 years, you haven't added to your defense, to the interior of defensive line with a 1 or 2 round pick. That's where I would build my defense. If I were building a team, if I'm on Madden building an NFL team, which I do frequently, you start with the interior. You build from the inside and build out. And so getting the edge rusher, like Greg Rousseau would be great if he had an interior rusher who was a game wrecker. And like you said, the cleanup sacks and everything else. They haven't addressed. I feel like they have not addressed the interior of their defense. They've been light, maybe on purpose, and that's come back to bite them. And I think that's between that and then missing on the talent in the first rounds. Where is it a thing where they're drafting for need too much? Like, is that what the issue is? Are they not taking best player available all the time?
What they're doing.
Or like you said, they're not being aggressive enough to go get guys who are actual studs and not guys that are potential projects that might be studs. Go ahead though, Mike. Sorry.
They're doing too much a combo of like need, character, and like they're close to where we're wanting them to be. Like even like James Cook, where they'll trade down a little bit because they know James Cook isn't a high second round pick, but they'll get him late in the second round. They'll trade down for Keon Coleman because they're like, we want Keon Coleman, but we know he's not a first round value, so we're going to get him in the second round. Too often they're getting guys that they like the character. It's a position of need, and they're getting them where they think the range is supposed to, rather than go, this is the best guy available. This is what our team could use. It's too much thinking like, okay, this guy will be a good player in 2 to 3 years and he'll help us out. No, we need guys that are just the most talented players possible. And the good comment here by John Robert, there are supposed to be a lot of good defensive tackles and defensive ends this year in the draft. So that is a good thing for the Bills overall. But I do think there's a lot of draft questions that you can bring up for the Bills, because the Eagles have gone all out on addressing their lines. And I think Brian Beane did a really good job building up the Bills' offensive line with guys like McGovern and then you look at the right guard and different positions. So like he has addressed it with people, but the defensive line, for whatever reason, they can't figure it out.
With everybody saying how deep the defensive line is in this draft, do you still say they should take that next year's first round pick, and go after Garrett or Crosby? Because to me, a surefire game record in the hand is worth 2 in the draft. Because I'm tired of hoping one of these guys comes close to a Garrett or a Crosby level. We have them out there right now. I'd rather take 2 of our swings and get a guy that's a guarantee to be what we need on the defensive line.
I'd 100% do it. I mean,
I agree.
I don't know what it'll take. Like where it gets tricky is like I would give up 2 first-round picks. You figure the Bills are going to be a contender in the next 2 years. Where are those picks going to be? Like 27,
high first round.
So like the
you Browns throw in a
might
player.
ask for a 3rd first rounder from you because they'll say you're going to be picking late. So that's where it gets a little bit tough. But yeah, like I'm willing to give up the picks to make it happen. This D line, we have shown no ability to immediately implement these guys on the defense. Mm-hmm. So when you're in a Super Bowl window, it's about winning now. And we got to stop thinking like, oh, we have 5-10 years. As Josh is going to be nearing 30 now, every one of these years is going to be more important. Each year we don't win at all.
Yeah, every year the clock ticks. If they don't win the Super Bowl next year, the pressure builds even more the year after that. It's 100%.
All right. So, but besides a defensive line, what other needs are we looking at? Because I'm still saying we need a number 1 wide receiver, because Amari Cooper was a bit of a role player. He might have drawn some attention, but I'm still of the belief we need to get a wide receiver. And if we can't utilize our first round pick, because that's going to be, put aside for possibly a deep defensive line draft or a major trade for Crosby or whoever, or Garrett or whoever else. I want to go after Jamar Chase if we have it in our budget. And then after that, I want to upgrade our cornerback, because Kyer Elam is not it. We need somebody opposite Christian Benford, and possibly look into upgrading, as much as I'd pain to say, letting go of DeMar Hamlin. I think we need someone a little bit more athletic. He was okay, but he was burned 1 or 2 many times. I think we should look into upgrading safety. That would be 4th on my list. 3rd is cornerback. 2nd, or maybe 1A, is receiver, and number 1 with a bullet is defensive line.
I love the way you're thinking, Mike. You just like go for the big fish right away. Cincinnati ain't gonna pay Cincinnati's definitely not paying all those guys. That situation, like Joe Burrow's media run right now, basically begging Cincinnati to pay their players, is admirable, but it's because he knows they're fucked, that they're losing. The
Browns are cheapskates. I lived briefly around the Cincinnati area for a while. I can tell you that the mood around the fan base is the Browns are just cheapskates. They don't believe in them anymore.
Yeah. So I laid this out the other day, my top 5 needs, and I agree with you about wide receiver. I said number 1, add a vertical threat at wide receiver. Now, I don't necessarily think that means they have to go get a Jamar Chase or even a T. Higgins. I think they do need that element to their offense, whether it's in the draft or whether they can take a swing on a guy like a Tutu Atwell or something like that. A guy I would be interested in if he looks healthy, because he did get hurt last year, so you'd have to see the good physicals on him. What's Chris Godwin look like? How's that recovery going? Can you get him on a discount? And is it a boom or bust situation where if he does look healthy, you could get a guy who is a number 1 level receiver on a short, a smaller salary because of the injury this year. So those are the kind of guys I'm looking around that kind of range, but they definitely need to add that element. And then I said 2 and 3 was a stud defensive tackle or defensive end and a supporting cast defensive tackle, defensive end, because I think that's how important adding to that D line is. Get a guy who can impact everything day one and get a guy that you can trust in your rotation too. I don't think you stop at one guy there. And then I would say competition at the secondary positions at Rasul Douglas's corner spot and then DeMar Hamlin's safety spot are definite needs, but lower on my totem pole.
Yeah, I'm pretty much with you guys. I think cornerback is a little bit higher of a need for me than what a lot of people have.
We're kind of all out on Douglas, right? Like
Douglas is now on the wrong side of 30. Mm-hmm. He didn't have a good season. I think if the Bills are in a position to add a quality corner opposite Christian Benford, I think that's something that you definitely want to pursue. Defensive line is obviously number one. If you have the ability to make a splash move, I would love it. I don't think it's going to happen with Myles Garrett or Max Crosby. I would love it, but I think defensive line is number one. Then I'll put corner and wide receiver at a tie for 2. When I put wide receiver, I think they're getting somebody no matter what. The question is, are they getting someone that is a vertical threat who can expand the field for them, or are they getting someone that is number one receiver potential to take over for Amari Cooper? If they can get Amari Cooper on a fair deal where he's not demanding big money, then I'm fine with keeping Amari Cooper and then just getting a vertical threat and basically keeping the offense pretty much the way it is. This was an offense that scored 30 points a game this year. I'm okay with what they have personnel-wise on offense as long as they get a vertical threat in there. If they let Amari Cooper go, then I'm more like, okay, we need somebody to go alongside Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, and whoever else they have in that group. But that said, if Amari Cooper stays, I think cornerback 2 becomes a position of value because I think when you have Cole Bishop, he's going to be the starter at some point, probably next year, maybe as soon as next year. So you probably can get by with Cole Bishop and Taylor Rapp for a year if you need to. But they really need to get someone opposite of Benford. You think about how good Benford is. If you can get an adequate corner opposite of him, you got a lot of ability to improve this defense with some improvement on the defensive line.
Someone in the comments mentioned Hollywood Brown. I believe Josh Allen is possibly high on him coming in.
Yeah, he is apparently always wanted to play with him. I think they came in the same draft year, right? Or am I mistaken? I think they came up through the process together, though, and became friends there. Because Hollywood played with with Baker all those years. So I think that they became pretty close friends throughout that, and have it worked out together in the off season and stuff like that. So would you do this, Mike? If there, what it is, I don't know if this is both Mikes, I guess, but Bunt, you're talking about cornerback 2 and a big swing there. Charvarius Ward is going to be available. His spot track is like $15 million. If they can take 2 big swings at some sort of defensive end and Ward, and then Hollywood Brown at like $5 million, would you take that? And then whatever else they can piecemeal together? Would you take 2 big swings
at corner and D line? And then you got to salvage the rest. You got to figure it out. I'm okay with that. I don't know how the whole salary cap situation yet. I haven't kind of dived into what they can do to create more space, what they're willing to do. But all I know is this we've been talking a lot of years about how they need to invest in the offense, how they need to get more offensive skill players. That is the opposite this year. We just saw what a defense can do to the Kansas City Chiefs. And for all these years, the Bills had great defenses because not only did they have McDermott at head coach, but they also had the good players. But now you've moved on from the Micah Hydes, the Jordan Poyers, the Trey Whites. Matt Milano's getting older. Your defensive line isn't playing at an elite level. Are they good? Yeah, they're solid. They get by. But are they elite? No. I think what we need is to retool the defense, get some studs there. And I don't think you need to have studs at every position, but if you can get corner taken care of, if you can get another pass rusher at D-line, those are the things that in big games, big moments, you look forward to them stepping up and making a big play to win the game. And if the Bills had just made a few more plays against Kansas City defensively, they probably win that game. So that's my focus, at least going into this offseason.
All right, real quick, we should touch on James Cook possibly getting an extension.
Yes.
The only reason I'm hesitant is because he's a good he's been developing into a good running back. He hasn't been the pass catching running back that we expected him to be. That role has sort of gone to Ty Johnson. And remind me, guys, what is his evaluation in pass blocking at all?
I mean, in the beginning it wasn't good, but he has gotten better.
I think he's adequate. I don't think he's good, but I think he's serviceable now.
Okay, so my philosophy is if you're going to pay a running back top 5 running back money, he's going to have to be like a Thurman Thomas mold. He's going to have to be a great runner, great pass catcher, and great pass blocker all in one. He has to be worth all that investment and not someone that you necessarily sub out for certain situations. He has to be one of those guys that you can put on the field all the time and make it worth your top 5 investment.
$15 million for James Cook, if that's what he posted on his Instagram story and pinned that tweet, whatever, $15 million. Hey man, I understand negotiating. You got to set your number high. Saquon Barkley made $12 million this year. You are not making more than Saquon Barkley.
Yeah.
And I would not pay you more than Saquon Barkley. And Saquon got a good, it's a pretty friendly deal. And I'm sure Saquon's going to get a nice little bump this offseason for his troubles in some way. They'll incentivize or whatever. But I'm sorry, you can't justify $15 million when we just watched that team. That guy have 2,000 yards on that team, and he made $12.2 million. So that's, I think, negotiate high. Yeah, you want 15 mil. I think Cook ends up signing a deal that's like 2 or 3 years for maybe it hits that 12 mil. Maybe it's like 11.5. And if some team wants to pay him 15, go ahead. And it would suck to lose a player like that. But I think that, you have to see what the market dictates. And, maybe it will be the market. Maybe people are going to go way past Saquon, but I'd be wary of it, especially with all the holes you have. Like if we talk about defensively, you can probably find a way to be effective at running back with Ray Davis, Ty Johnson, and somebody else that you pick up next season if you need, or 2 years from now if you need to. Or you trade Cook and you get more assets to make a bigger move if he really is going to hold out or do some shit. So I think they got options.
I'll be quick because I know you have to go. $50 million is crazy talk. Like you said, start the negotiations there and then just subtract $5 million, and then we're already at that higher point than even what I want to go.
Agreed.
I don't want to see any contract show double digits per year. He's a running back. Yes, he's very good. He's an impact player on the Bills. I don't want to see any running back on the Bills at this point getting $10 million. Like as good as James Cook is, like Saquon Barkley getting $12 million. James Cook is not worth between $2 to $3 million of what Saquon Barkley is worth. He's explosive. He has the ability to take it to the house. He's had one truly elite season so far. That was this year. Last year, very good, but couldn't find the end zone more than like 6 times. This year, found the end zone a ton, but still barely over 1,000 yards. So I think we're way off from $15 million. I think my expectation is like, what I would be willing to pay him like $7-8 million a year, maybe 9. Like I'm not going more than that. I think you can get other people in the draft for $5 million less that'll get you similar ability. Like I'm not saying that he's not great, but there's a lot of great running backs. That's why their value isn't what they think it is. So I don't want to lose James Cook. I think you saw what he adds to the Bills offense this season, but that's a crazy starter number, and I would basically cut it in half if I was the Bills with what I'm actually trying to pay him.
Yeah, I think they're going to hardball it. I mean, you have to try to. And I think it'd be silly to say that nobody's antennas were raised last year when they drafted Ray Davis, because it's like, okay, like we get like a 2-back tandem might be a good idea, sure, but you're also know that money's coming, and then maybe that's
how did they run the ball against the Jets on Monday Night Football? Perfectly fine.
Yeah,
like that's the thing. Like a running back might think he's great, but that's also a product of your offensive line in front of him. Ray Davis had a lot of good plays in the pass game. Ty Johnson had a lot of good plays in the pass game. I think we saw every Bills running back this season really have a high level of success. To me, I'm going to sometimes credit the offensive line and the quarterback as part of that as well.
Agreed. And so we'll see what happens there. Steve here, if Cook is headstrong, do you think they could trade him? It depends how the negotiation goes, and it depends if they're actually even negotiating or talking to him right now. You always have to be wary about contract year players too. And I know it's not his contract year, but clearly Dalvin Cook mentioned 15 million like in October in a tweet, like something about James making that specific money. They've had this has been an idea in James Cook's mind for the whole season. That's part of the reason you want to ball out. That's great, but I've seen it way too many times where a guy balls out the year they think they're getting paid, and then it isn't the same the rest of their career. So
if you could get a team to agree to it, would you throw in James Cook for a Myles Garrett or Max Crosby trade?
Yes.
Hell, I would throw James Cook. I would even throw in Greg Rousseau if I need to get
Rousseau or Oliver.
Trade Cook. What if it's just
Trade
like
him
a
off?
basketball trade, like Cook, Rousseau, and like a first round pick for Myles Garrett?
I mean, I'm willing to like be creative.
it.
Honestly, some of these guys, the Bills aren't going to be able to resign. I know when like we talk about Cook, Shakir, Bernard, like the one like I want guys like Benford and I want Shakir. The other three, like, and they have to move parts to make things happen. I'm open to it. Like, I don't want to actively be like, oh, let's try to get rid of Rousseau or let's try to get rid of Cook. But like Shakir and Benford are the two that are going to be the hardest to replace for what they offer to this team.
And it's just the price of being a great team and having good players. Like, you can't keep them all. You have to find the places where you can let some guys go and fill them in with younger, cheaper, personnel and go from there and hope those guys are better or just as good and hopefully better. So it's going to be interesting. There's a lot. That's the fun thing about this offseason, like fun and also terrifying thing about this offseason is that clearly it's one of the most vital so far in Brandon Beane's career. And there's a lot of options that he can go and a lot of different ways that they can go to try to build this team. They're going to have some amount of cap space. They have 3 picks in the first 2 rounds and a lot of needs. So we'll see, man. Any last thoughts before we get out of here?
No, just quick, fun show. We're going to have a lot more of these coming up in draft season. So I know a lot of people aren't in football mode right now, but just looking forward to having more football talk when the draft gets closer and we have prospects to talk about. And I know it's depressing after the season, but I can't wait to see what the Bills do this offseason, free agency, the draft, and how they build the team to try to turn into a contender next year. Because with Kansas City getting blown out, now it feels like there might be a little bit more hope again that you can build a team that can take them down next year. So we're in that part of the year where we'll talk ourselves into believing once again in the very near future.
The aftermath of this feels very much like the Bucs Chiefs Super Bowl, and everybody coming out of that was saying, "Oh, we got to upgrade our defensive line." Well, I guess little has changed.
Yep, some things stay the same. Right now, guys, we are 2 weeks and 1 day from the start of the NFL Combine, and exactly 1 month from the start of free agency. So NFL season doesn't stop. Train doesn't stop. It doesn't stop here on Pay the Bills. A lot of moving parts going forward. Can't wait. Going to be a fun off season. But thank you all for joining. We paid the Bills. Shout out to Mike and Mike for joining on tonight. We'll be back next week to talk some more Bills off-season story. We'll see what happens. I mean, every week it seems like there's something crazy going on. I guess the couple housekeeping notes, the Bills do have a new special teams coordinator who was regarded, I think it was the NFLPA I saw, regarded him as the second best special teams coordinator a couple years ago. It was out of football last year. It was with the Panthers. Chris Taper, or is it Tabor? I'm just redoing this off my memory right now. I think Taper, though. Tapor.
I don't care how we say or
is.
spell his name as long as he's had previous experience, unlike the last two special
I'm
teams
excited about
coordinators.
them making the move.
As long as it's not pronounced Matt Smiley, I think it's
I agree.
correct.
It's a good move.
Not to take a shot at Matt Smiley. Like, he obviously was part of the team for many years, but the Bills made a move that they had to make. And unfortunately for him, there's too many mistakes that happen over the course of the season.
For sure. And then Alec Anderson signed his exclusive tender today, so will likely be on the team next year. 6th offensive lineman staying around. That offensive line is going to be ready to go. Thank you, John. Tabor. Okay, I'll get that. It's just you see the letters. Sometimes they flip. It happens. But thank you guys for joining. We'll be back next week. Have a great night, folks. Go Bills.